Tears welled in Alice's eyes, hot and sudden. They weren't tears of sadness or fear, but of profound, bone-deep relief. He didn't just accept her, he celebrated her. He didn't just love her, he needed all the parts of her she had feared were liabilities. She hung up the phone a few minutes later, her face wet with tears, a smile so wide it made her cheeks ache. She walked slowly out of the back hall and into the main diner. Jolene, Vera, and Mel were all pretending not to have been listening, an effort so transparent it was comical. They looked at her, their faces, a mixture of hope and trepidation. Alice simply nodded, a slow, deliberate movement, and then she broke into a grin that lit up the entire room. The reaction was instantaneous. Jolene let out a whoop that made Henry jump and spill his coffee. Vera burst into a fit of happy hiccuping sobs. And Mel, in a move that stunned them all into a momentary silence, reached over and violently rang the order-up bell 5 times. All right, settle down," he bellowed, though he was grinning from ear to ear. "On the house, coffee's on the house." He looked around, a fierce proprietary pride on his face. "Just for 5 minutes, don't get used to it." The diner for those 5 minutes was a pocket of pure, unadulterated joy in the middle of a Tuesday morning. It wasn't just a celebration of Alice's future, but a celebration of their shared past, of the family that had weathered every storm together. Their world wasn't shrinking with her departure. It was expanding, sending an emissary out into a bigger, brighter world, knowing she would always have a home to come back to. Later that night, long after the last customer had gone and the confetti of their impromptu celebration, torn up napkins thrown by Jolene, had been swept away, Alice sat in her quiet apartment. Tommy was asleep, and the only sound was the gentle hum of the city outside her window. The future was still a vast, unknown territory. It would be complicated and challenging, a daily negotiation between 2 different worlds. There would be moments of doubt and insecurity, times when she would feel like an imposter. But for the first time, she felt equal to the challenge. She was no longer a woman waiting for her life to start. She was the one holding the blueprints. She picked up her guitar, her fingers finding the strings with a familiar comfort. A new song was taking shape, a melody filled not with longing, but with the quiet, powerful grace of a woman who had finally truly found her own voice, and she couldn't wait for the whole world to hear it. Chapter 14, The Merger. The joyous confetti-fueled haze of the decision eventually gave way to the bright, unsparing light of a new reality. Agreeing to build a life together, Alice discovered, was the easy part. The actual construction was a far messier business, a complicated merger of 2 vastly different corporate cultures. The first real shareholder meeting took place the following Saturday. Rob, who was now spending most of his time in Phoenix overseeing the corporate transition, had made a simple request: he wanted to have lunch. Not at a quiet, upscale bistro, but at Mel's Diner. During the peak of the Saturday rush, are you sure Alice had asked him over the phone, a hint of panic in her voice? It's certifiably insane on a Saturday. Mel calls it the feed trough frenzy. "It's your bedrock," he'd replied, his voice warm with amusement. "I want to see the foundation up close." He arrived at precisely 1230 p.m., just as Alice was balancing 3 plates of pancakes and a side of bacon on one arm. Ted, the chauffeur, opened the door, and Rob stepped into a wall of noise, the shriek of the milkshake machine, a dozen competing conversations, Mel bellowing, "Pick up Vera," and the sizzle and spit of the grill. To Alice, it was the sound of home. To an outsider, it was the sound of chaos. "Welcome to the C-suite," she said, guiding him through the minefield of spilled syrup and scurrying children to the only available booth. What followed was a masterclass in controlled pandemonium. Vera, in an effort to be helpful, decided to become Rob's personal narrator. "There's a fork to your left, Rob," she announced, her voice loud enough to be heard across the room. "And a napkin. It's paper. Be careful, Jolene just walked by, and her hair is very high. There's a child with a jelly donut on a collision course." Rob, to his credit, just smiled calmly. "Thank you, Vera. I've got it." Mel, meanwhile, was a study in contradictions. He wiped down their table with a rag 3 separate times, a level of attention he usually reserved for a health inspection. But when Rob ordered the chili, Mel's insecurity bristled. "You sure you want that?" he grumbled, leaning over the table. "It's got a kick. It's not like that fancy bland food you're probably used to." Mel Robb said, his expression perfectly serious. I have heard legendary tales of this chili. I've been looking forward to it. Mel puffed out his chest and marched back to the kitchen mollified. Alice watched it all, feeling like a translator at the United Nations. She was the bridge between his world of quiet confidence and her world of loud, affectionate dysfunction. She found herself explaining the unwritten rules. Don't make eye contact with Henry before he's had his second coffee. The complex relationships Jolene flirts with everyone. Don't take it personally. And the menu's many ever deceptions. The fresh fruit salad is from a can get the pie. Robb, in turn, was not a passive observer. He was actively mapping her world with his other senses. The acoustics in here are fascinating, he commented, tilting his head. I can distinguish the sound of the coffee pot being refilled from 3 booths away, and the grill. It tells a story. The sharp sizzle is bacon, but the lower, steadier sound is a burger patty. He took a bite of the infamous chili. Alice held her breath. He chewed thoughtfully, then a slow grin spread across his face. It's complex, he finally said, and I think my taste buds are now fully awake for the rest of the week. Just as a fragile peace was settling, a new force of nature descended upon their table. Carrie Sharples, dressed in a vibrant floral pantsuit and smelling faintly of lavender, made her entrance. So she chirped, sliding into the booth next to Robb and patting his arm with a familiar possessiveness. You're the one who's trying to steal my Alice. I'm Carrie, the hot canary. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Carrie, Robb said, turning his charming smile on her. Alice has told me so much about you. I was sorry to have missed your performance. Oh, you'll have another chance, don't you worry, Carrie assured him. But let's talk about you handsome. What are your intentions? Are you good to our girl? Do you have a nice pension plan? Are you a flosser? These things are important. The interrogation was relentless, a whirlwind of charm, nosiness, and genuine concern. Alice tried to intervene, but it was no use. Carrie was auditioning her potential son-in-law, and Robb was handling it with a grace that was nothing short of heroic. Later that afternoon, they escaped to the relative tranquility of Alice's apartment. The energy of the diner still clung to them, a buzzing in the air. As Alice made them both a cup of tea, Robb sat on her comfortable, slightly lumpy sofa, looking more at home than he ever could in a sterile high-rise. Well, she said, handing him a mug, congratulations. You survived the merger's first field test. I loved it, he said, and she knew he was being sincere. It's loud and it's crazy, and I'm pretty sure your boss is a danger to himself and others, but it's alive. I understand why it's your bedrock. He took a sip of tea. Speaking of which, I think it's time I introduced you to my own corporate culture. I need to call my mother. Alice's stomach did a nervous little flip. She knew from their conversations that Eleanor McGregor was a very different entity from the effervescent Carrie Sharples. Eleanor was old money East Coast society and fiercely protective of her only son, whose success and disability she viewed with a complicated mixture of pride and perpetual worry. Alice sat in her favorite armchair, pretending to read a magazine as Robb dialed. She could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was more than enough to paint a picture. Hi, Mother. Yes, I'm fine. Phoenix Island. Warm. He paused, listening. Actually, the move is definite. The board approved it this morning. Yes, it's a big step. Another longer pause. Alice could almost hear the polite, probing questions coming through the line. Well, that's the other reason I'm calling, Robb, said his voice remaining calm and even. I've met someone. No, it's more than that. It's very serious. Alice held her breath, her eyes fixed on the page of her magazine, though the words were just a blur. Her name is Alice Hyatt, Robb said. He listened for a moment, his jaw tightening slightly. Yes, I'm sure. Mother, her job is not Hoochie Island. She's the strongest person I've ever met. She's raised an incredible son on her own. She has a voice that could break your heart, and she has a kind of quiet wisdom that I rely on more than she knows. He paused again, and this time there was a note of steel in his voice. She's the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. I know it's sudden, but when you know, you know. I can't wait for you to meet her. You're going to love her. He said his goodbyes and hung up the phone, the silence in the small apartment feeling vast and significant. He had not just told his mother about her, he had defined her, defended her, and declared his future with her all in one breath. He turned his face toward her, a small, weary smile on his lips. Phase 1 of the family merger is complete, he said. There may be some cultural adjustments required on her end. Alice got up from her chair and went to sit beside him on the sofa. She took his hand, her heart swelling with a love so fierce it almost hurt. The day had been a chaotic whirlwind, a clash of chilly and class of boisterous affection and implied distant disapproval. It was going to be complicated, it was going to be difficult. But sitting there in the quiet of her own living room, their hands intertwined, she knew the central truth of their own small company. The foundation was solid, the leadership was united. And whatever challenges the market threw at them, they would face them together. The merger was going to be a success. Chapter 15. When Worlds Collide. The news landed in the diner with the subtlety of a dropped tray of dishes. Rob's mother, Eleanor McGregor, was flying in from Connecticut for the weekend, specifically to meet Alice. It was not, Alice understood, with a sudden chilling certainty, a casual social call. It was an inspection, a C-suite level top-down appraisal of the most important acquisition her son had ever made. Panic cold and immediate set in. "What am I going to wear?" she asked the diner at large, her voice an octave higher than usual. "What will I cook? What do you serve? A woman who probably considers caviar a light snack. Do I hide the mismatched silverware?" The diner crew, never ones to sit out a crisis, immediately formed an ad hoc consulting committee. "You need to project an aura of quiet confidence and sophistication," Jolene declared, flipping through a mental lookbook. "I'm thinking a simple, elegant black dress. Or maybe something in a bold jewel tone. Or leopard print. Leopard print says, 'I'm a classy woman, but I'm also a tiger, so don't cross me.'" "Oh, no, that's all wrong." Vera fretted, her face pale with secondhand anxiety. "You need to be relatable. You should wear your favorite apron, and whatever you do, don't tell any stories about us. Don't mention the time I tried to pay for my groceries with Monopoly money because I got my purses mixed up, or the time Mel—" "I get it." Vera Alice cutting her head, starting to throb. "You're both wrong." Mel pronounced from behind the grill, brandishing his spatula like a scepter. "All that fancy stuff is phony. You just gotta be yourself. Tell her what you really think. Argue with her a little. Rich people ain't used to that. It shows you've got moxie." The advice was, as usual, spectacularly unhelpful. The only person who seemed unperturbed was Carrie Sharples. When she heard the news, her eyes lit up with a strategic gleam. "Eleanor McGregor is coming to town," she said, a slow, delighted smile spreading across her face. "Well, this won't do at all. A formal inspection requires a proper welcoming committee." She patted Alice's hand. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about a thing, darling. I'll be there, it's only right, a meeting of the matriarchs." And so the stage was set, not in a neutral restaurant or a grand hotel lobby, but in Alice's small, humble apartment. It was the only place she felt she could truly be herself, even if being herself was currently a state of abject terror.